Well, good morning, everyone. I am Rick Siegfried. I'm the Government Affairs Chairman for EAA Warbirds of America and still remain on the EAA Warbirds of America Board of Directors. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about how MOSAIC may affect some operations dealing with warbird aircraft. And MOSAIC takes place basically tomorrow, October 22nd, 2025. So it'll actually be in effect at that point in time. So we're excited about this. We did not get everything we wanted out of MOSAIC, okay? However, it is a definite improvement. Certainly those of you that are interested in sport pilot or an easier path to get your initial pilot certificate, there are a lot of options in MOSAIC that'll apply to you. To warbird aircraft, the big thing is they've gotten rid of the restrictions they used to have on the weight of the airplane and the number of seats. However, if you do decide to, if you're already been certified either as an ATP commercial pilot or private pilot, you can always step down to the sport pilot situation and use your driver's license as your medical. Well, it's not as your medical. They're accepting your driver's license as meeting the FAA standard. So basically, as we age and we, I've given up my first class medical and I'm down, I do a second class medical down, but it may come a point where I decide to go down to even a basic med or potentially I could use go down to the sport pilot category. The disadvantage with the sport pilot category, there are a lot of restrictions. And if you even have advanced ratings above the private pilot's license or above, you can always operate as a sport pilot if you choose to. And it's opened up a lot of warbird aircraft that were not eligible before will now be eligible under MOSAIC to be operated by a sport pilot. There's no weight restriction. The only there can have up to 4 seats in the aircraft. However, you are restricted to having only a pilot and 1 passenger under a sport pilot authorization, if that's how you choose to operate the aircraft. However, it does open up basically a lot of the L-birds will fit this category. The Stearman will fit this category. So there's a lot of range that of airplanes that you can fly if you're willing to put up with these sport pilot restrictions. And that's really what MOSAIC is doing for us. The good news is, in typical fashion, the FAA does the best job they can to come up with rules and technical orders, FARs that is, and the tech orders is how they implement the FARs, and that fit as many categories as possible. We don't always get it right the first time, but we always keep on trying. That's what the Government Affairs Committee does. That's what the EAA does, working with their government advocacy people and working with the FAA and the other organizations that represent pilots across all facets of pilots, the AOPA and GAMA and the rest of it. we're continually working to improve the situation for pilots. And one of the things we did get with MOSAIC, and by the way, MOSAIC, we termed that term pretty loose, but it basically is the modernization of special airworthiness uh, certificates. And that's what the MOSAIC stands for, or certification, I should say. Um, there are some changes in there that redefine the category of the public use, which some warbirds do fall into the public use. If they're experimental exhibition airplanes, there's restriction on there on what you can do. But under public use, we're allowed to, like some of the operators of experimental exhibition retired military jets, both foreign and domestic, are using those aircraft under the public use provisions that MOSAIC has expanded on. I can't really go into details with that at this time, but if you operate those type of aircraft, this might be something you're interested in, so you may want to investigate that. In addition to that, as I mentioned, we're always bound, and as if you are a private pilot or better, you've learned to operate within the federal air regulations, which are clearly defined, on the FAA's website and others. But another thing that does the FAA uses to implement those federal air regulations is they use tech orders, and tech orders there's a lot of different tech orders out there within the government arena, and right now we're operating under a what they call 8130.2K, and they're rewriting that even as we speak, and it'll still stay 8130.2, but the letter at the end changes. They're working on M, which is hopefully going to open up some more opportunities in the Warbird arena. I can't really talk about it again that now because it's not been published yet. There's we've talked about it in meetings, but we haven't gone through all the situation until it's implemented, which will be sometime before next year. Basically, there is no gross weight limit under the current sport pilot. There's no class or weight limit like there used to be under the current sport pilot situation. You can have up to 4 seats, as I mentioned earlier. However, you can still only fly with a pilot and 1 passenger, or a pilot and an instructor, depending on what you're operating for. So that is a restriction. The stall speed, again, you have to get it a little bit into the details, but somewhere between 59 and 61 knots is what the stall speed is going to be for the landing configuration, where in the old sport pilot rules, it was down around 45 knots, pardon me. So that's a big improvement and opens up the field for a lot of aircraft, including some of the smaller Warbird aircraft. So that's an exciting thing. In the old sport pilot days, you had to have a fixed landing gear, where now we can have either fixed and or retractable gear. It can be in any configuration, tricycle gear or tail wheel. You still will need an endorsement for a tail wheel if you haven't flown or aren't current in tail wheel aircraft. So all those things, you'll still be required. And one thing that has changed a little bit is in the area of compensation. Even if you are flying as a sport pilot and you're not a commercial, if you have a commercial certificate or not, does it make any difference? If you're in certain operations under the new MOSAIC, you'll be allowed to be compensated for some of that work within the parameters. We've got to be a little bit careful there, but if you're doing, if you're shooting aerial photography out of your Stearman, shooting ground, and you want to get compensated for that, you can do that. You still can't carry people for hire, and but there is some flexibility that wasn't in the previous rules. How did MOSAIC start is an interesting question, okay? And what really forced MOSAIC to be created was the FAA knew that there were going to be drones and other aircraft sharing the airspace with us. And there were no provisions for different sets of rules and the certification of drones, the certification of the pilots for drones, and a lot of other factors. So they realized they had to do something to change the regulations and certainly to change the certification process for aircraft. So they said, well, if we're going to open this up, we might as well review the current regulations, the current tech orders, and see if we can expand this and improve on the certification for both pilots and aircraft, and review all the regulations that are out there. And that's why they came up with the terminology of the modernization of special airworthiness certification, because some warbirds fall into that. Certainly drones will fall into that. The light sport aircraft will fall into that. And again, this is what started this whole process. And then as we got together with industry, both EAA, Warbirds of America, AOPA, and the other industry alphabet groups, were invited to take part in this if they wanted to. Many of us stepped up and did that, and we've been meeting on and off over the last many years to improve those and open up the operations to a greater number of people. Hence the being adopted to the sport pilot rules and the recreational pilot rules, which is another certificate that is rarely used, is one that something was made or that was created in the FARs to allow for limited operations in smaller type aircraft, but again, to get more people involved in flying aircraft at a reduced cost. And then, of course, we still have the traditional pilot, commercial, or private pilot, commercial ratings, airline transport pilot, all which have their own set of limitations as well. So MOSAIC was an attempt to review all that and open this up with fresh eyes and look how we might improve and correct some of the errors that have been made in the operating rules, just as they've been created over the last 80 years of aviation. So depending on how far back you want to go, things do change. And again, the good news is there are people who recognize these changes, and both within the FAA as well as, of course, within industry. And then we work together to try to solve and make better some of those situations. And that's what MOSAIC is hopefully doing. So, okay, so MOSAIC is very exciting. This is the first time we've had such a broad review of the rules that govern all pilots and the certification of all aircraft. So it's very excited to be involved in this time. And there's going to be a lot of information out there. There's a lot of good sources for information. The one that we like to use, EAA, the organization that is EAA Warbirds of America is a division of, has got a lot of information out there. If you simply go to the EAA.org website, search for MOSAIC, and look for it. There's a couple of videos out there. There was a webinar that they did a few months ago that was done by Tom Charpentier of the of EAA Government Affairs, and he did a great job kind of explaining a lot of this, not Warbird focused, but focused in general. And that's a hour-long video with a question and answer session at the end that will help you educate yourself as to how to operate under this new systems. Plus, there's a bunch of other videos and other information on their EA's website that you can go to see whether or not this is going to apply to you. And again, specifically, the other exciting thing for the Warbird aficionado is the Stearman, the Wacos, the L5s, other than just L-birds, also will be covered under this new exemption, should you decide that's going to be your entry as a sport pilot into the Warbird community. There's an option for you. So that's very exciting news. In addition to that, as I said, if you have advanced ratings, but you're just slowing down for whatever reason, there's options under this that may be appealing to you as an individual of how you want to close out your career in aviation. So there's a lot of good things that have come out of this, and I think we all should be looking forward to this. It's expanding the love of flying to a wider audience, and the main reason I fly airplanes is because it's fun, and this puts the fun back in aviation again. And that's what I look for out of the whole MOSAIC operation, and why I went to Washington, D.C. more than once, just simply to take part in these meetings and try to influence some of the outcomes that we have here. Even though they started a couple of years ago going down that path, over the years, there's times where people within the organization, by the organization, I mean within the government, the FAA, were going to walk away from it. So fortunately, cooler heads prevailed, and they decided, no, this is something we need to review. This is things that need to take place. And they continued to persevere, and we finally did end up with MOSAIC as being adopted, basically adopted last July, with an implementation of this fall. And that's where we're at today. Still going to be making changes, as they always do. As we see a problem, we work hard to, well, wait a minute, we didn't realize that was going to be an obstacle to some individuals or aircraft. So how can we make a work around or a work with that situation and develop it into be part of aviation? And so we are continually changing. I'm always excited when I get on these committees, and I learned, some of the people I work with that are involved in the air show industry, have Bonanzas, and some of them have Barons, and other that they use for transportation. Fewer, but some of them even have Stearmans and even a T6. So there's other people that enjoy flying that are not only enthusiasts that have other roles in their daily careers, but also they work for the FAA. So that's exciting.